I know I've talked about it before, but I'll talk about it again. I just keep finding deals on the Super Nintendo. So many deals, in fact, that I can't keep up. Sellers on eBay will be sending me offers, but I'm too broke from other deals to be able to buy them. I've completed the N64 library 3 times, and I've completed the NES library once loose, including stadium events, and then I completed it about 80% complete in box without stadium events, but I had all the other rare games, and I've never had so many consistent deals just keep rolling in like I have on the SNES. I mean, there are great deals here and there, but with the SNES it's all the time. And these deals were happening long before I ever decided to go for the Super Nintendo library. Years ago, someone gave me a box full of 100% complete in box Super Nintendo games. Chrono Trigger was in there, Robo Trek, games I don't even have back yet. And they just said, pay me whatever you want for them. Then there was the Mega Lot that we covered in the Quest. Almost $1,000 worth of games we got for $350. I recently won Castlevania Dracula X complete in box for $700. And the cart needs upgraded, but even then, when I upgrade the cart and sell the bad label one, it's still gonna be a lot cheaper than it should have gone for. And then there's Kirby Dream Land 3, which I was watching the box and manual for it for $700, and with the condition this is in, it was well worth $700 because the cart's only $250 I believe. And out of nowhere, the seller sent me an offer for $500, which I immediately jumped on that. And then I found the cart for really cheap, so this, in this condition, should have been around $1,000, but I forget what it was total, but it was a lot cheaper than $1,000. And here's another game I got yesterday, World Soccer 94 Road to Glory. This, in this condition, should have been a $350 game. I sent the seller an offer of $200 plus shipping, and I expected a counter offer, but he just accepted the offer, and here it is. Oh, and then there's this game, Hurricanes. Yes, this is arguably the rarest complete in box game on the Super Nintendo, and the seller came down over 50% off of his price. I thought it was going to be one of those things where when I started collecting for the system, the deals were going to stop rolling in, but that hasn't been the case at all. What I think it is the Super Nintendo has such a massive library. What I think it is the Super Nintendo has such a massive library, and there's a myriad of rare and expensive games on it. So even though a game is rare and valuable, sellers can sit on some of these games for a while. I think that's part of it at least. But also with the massive library, that leaves room for a lot of overlooked and underrated games. And today we have one of those games. Hidden gem, if you will. With that being said, today we have 7 more games that we'll be adding to the collection. Let's check them out. And the first game up is King of Dragons. King of Dragons was developed and published by Capcom, fighting its way onto store shelves in 1994. King of Dragons is a beat-em-up game. Starting off the game, you can choose from one of 5 heroes: an elf, wizard, fighter, cleric, or dwarf. Each character has their own strength, weakness, and attack style. The gameplay is completely different based on the character you pick. For example, playing as a dwarf, you'll have a very short but powerful attack. Playing as an elf, you'll have a weaker but long range attack. That gives King of Dragons a ton of replayability. The controls are responsive, and I love how you can jump in a direction and flip around to attack while going in the opposite direction. You also upgrade your character as you make your way through the levels, which upgrades their health and attack power. In addition to your normal attack, you also have magic. Using your stored magic will decrease your health bar, but you can also find magic orbs that you can strike for the same effects without losing health. If your health starts getting low, you can find fruit to increase it, and you can also find gold and jewels to upgrade your experience. The bosses are all unique and pretty easy, but they take a lot of hits to beat, especially if you're using a long-range character. The music in the game is great, but the sound effects are really muffled. The game also looks great and the gameplay is fun. It doesn't get boring because the levels are super short. The game also has a 2-player option. With 2 players you can choose different characters that will help make up for another's weaknesses. Overall, King of Dragons is a beat 'em up worth playing. King of Dragons is game number 41 for the collection, and I have about $500 in trade for it. And at $500, that brings our total up to $12,875 for the collection. Next up, we have a sports game, NBA Jam. NBA Jam was developed by Iguana Entertainment and published by Acclaim. It dunked into stores in 1994. NBA Jam is an arcade basketball game. You can play with up to 4 people using a multi-tap. You can also choose from real teams and players. On the court, it's 2-on-2 basketball. The controls are easy to learn and anyone can pick up the game and play. Y passes and steals, and B shoots and blocks. Then you have L and R for turbo buttons, which allow you to run fast and do some crazy dunks. And you can't talk about NBA Jam without talking about the announcer and his phrases. The game looks great, it's a lot of fun, and even if you're not a fan of basketball, you can have a blast playing it. This is one of the few games I grew up playing on the Super Nintendo. It's cheap and still worth playing today. NBA Jam is game number 42 for the collection, and it cost me $29 shipped. And that brings our total up to $12,904 for the Super Nintendo Complete in Box Quest. And the next game up is On the Ball. On the Ball was developed and published by Taito, rolling onto store shelves in 1992. On the Ball is a puzzle game where you guide a ball through a maze. You don't control the ball itself, but you move the whole maze around the ball. The objective is straightforward. Guide your ball through the maze and reach the goal before the time limit runs out. On your way through the maze, there are a ton of obstacles you'll have to get through. Some obstacles you just have to avoid, some will deduct time from the clock, and others you have to break through. You can also find timer increases which you'll have to decide if they're worth going for. The controls are good and allow you to turn the maze at 3 different speeds. Each speed comes in handy in certain scenarios, but you'll be wanting to use the fast speed most of the time because the time runs out quick. You're sometimes given a bonus chance. If you're successful, you'll get to keep playing, but most of the time your ball shatters and you have to start the level over. The visuals are good, but there isn't a lot of detail in the game. The music is okay, but nothing memorable. The game also allows you to use the mouse controller, which is a pretty interesting option. There's also a password system to save your progress. It controls just like the game, so you have to be careful inputting the passwords. Overall, On the Ball is an interesting game. If you're looking for something different to play, it's worth checking out. On the Ball is game number 43 for the collection, and I have about $70 in trade in it. And at $70, that brings our total up to $12,974 for the SNES Quest. And the next game up is what my clickbait title is all about, and that game is Thunder Spirits. Thunder Spirits was developed by Technosoft and published by Sega. It shot onto the SNES in 1992. Thunder Spirits is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up. This game is a blast. Use the A button to fire your weapon. The L and R buttons can be used to change your weapon and change the ship speed. Being able to change your ship speed is a genius mechanic. So many shoot-'em-ups are ruined with something as simple as the ship speed. You can make your ship really slow, really fast, or in between. Switching your weapons on demand is another awesome feature, and it works so perfect in the game. Throughout the levels you can find all types of power-ups that I haven't seen in any other shmup. So as awesome as this game is, why isn't it higher on people's favorites list? Because the game has a major flaw that would turn away the average player. There's no options. No difficulty levels, the consistent mashing of the fire button. Starting up the game, you go straight to the title screen and it says press start. A normal game would have an options menu there to tailor the game to your liking, but there actually is an options menu. If you read the instruction manual, you have to press and hold select and then press the start button to access the options. From there you can select one of 4 difficulty levels from easy to maniac, and they also have a rapid fire option, which completely changes the gameplay. Why they didn't put a normal options menu in the game, who knows? But it would probably be a lot higher on people's lists. The visuals are good, but level 2 has a lava background, and a lot of enemies are launching fire shots at you, which blend into the background. Other than that, I don't have any complaints. The music is great and the controls are excellent. The game does experience some slowdown, especially when you're using rapid fire. It can throw your rhythm off, but it doesn't constantly happen, so it's not a major turnoff. The enemies are all unique and the bosses are really fun. The bosses are actually easier than the level themselves. The only other issue I found with the game is there's no bombs. You only have your main firing weapons, which is a bummer. As creative as they were with the main weapons, I would have loved to see what they did with the bombs. If you're a fan of shmups and don't have Thunder Spirits, it should be one of the next ones on your list. This is an underrated game and very affordable. Thunder Spirits is game number 44 for the collection, and it cost me $77 shipped. And at $77, that brings our total up to $13,051 for the Super NES library. The next 3 games we have up, I gotten a lot locally, so we'll be covering the price at the end of those 3 games. And the first game of those is Clue. Clue was developed by Sculptured Software and published by Parker Brothers. It released for the Super Nintendo in 1992. Clue is a strategy game based on the board game of the same name. The goal of the game is to run around Mr. Body's mansion and find clues to figure out who killed him, with what weapon, and in what room. There are 5 difficulty levels from amateur to detective. The lower the difficulty, the easier the clues are. When it's your turn, you roll a die and move across the board that number of spaces. When you enter a room, you give a suggestion of who could have done it and with what weapon. The game will then give you a clue whether or not that person was in the room, or if that weapon was in the room or not. You can also make suggestions in lieu of rolling the die. Once you think you know who the killer is, you can make an accusation. If you choose wrong, it's game over for you. And if you're playing with the computer, you just get to sit there and watch them play the game unless you reset the console. The visuals and sound aren't great, but they do the job. The only thing I can really complain about is not being able to see the whole map when it's your turn to move. You either have to know what the board looks like or see the instruction manual. Other than that, the game does what it's supposed to. Clue is game number 45 for the collection. Up next we have Super Battle Tank War in the Gulf. Super Battle Tank was developed and published by Absolute Entertainment and released for the SNES in 1992. Super Battle Tank is a tank simulation game that takes place during Operation Desert Storm. The game is pretty much an updated version of the NES game of the same name. The gameplay is identical with upgraded graphics and sound. The controls are also much better in the game as well. You use the L and R buttons to turn the tank, the D-pad to turn the turret, and you use the A, B, X, and Y buttons to fire, bring up the map, speed up, and slow down. Although the graphics are updated, the game still looks pretty plain and it's hard to see what direction you're pointing on the map. The game aims to be realistic, but you'll be hauling across the desert, and the enemies will take off like an SR-71 Blackbird, circle around and attack you from head on. Seriously, look how fast you're traveling on the big map. And all the enemies have the same pattern. You get 4 weapons in the game, which are your cannon, that is your main weapon, a laser which will one-shot kill an enemy, smoke which whites out the screen, and a machine gun which is needed to take out helicopters. The sound in the game is good and a huge improvement over the NES game. The gameplay is repetitive but not terrible. It does feel a bit dated because it's not much different from the NES game. Super Battle Tank is a cheap game, and if you want to play it, the Super NES version is the way to go. And Super Battle Tank is game number 46 for the collection. And last but not least is Final Fight. Final Fight was developed and published by Capcom, releasing for the Super Nintendo in 1991. Final Fight is a beat-em-up game. The story goes, Mike Hager, the mayor of Metro City, is cracking down on crime. He plans to arrest every member of the Mad Gear gang that's causing all the chaos. The leader of the gang hears about the plan and kidnaps Mike's daughter, Jessica. You play as either Hager or Cody. Cody is Jessica's boyfriend. Mike and Cody have their own attacks, but they are the same button combinations, so you can be good at the game with both players. In addition to their regular attacks, Mike and Cody also have super attacks. Mike has a super spin attack, and Cody has a super kick. Both attacks are powerful, but they take away from the life bar. The controls in the game are great overall, but at times they felt sticky trying to perform some of the moves. So much so that I changed my controller out while playing and found out it wasn't an issue with the controller. It's only a minor issue though, and all the other movements were smooth. The visuals in the game are nice, really nice. I'm a fan of the big sprites and beat 'em up games. The game has a lot in common with Ninja Warriors. The music and sound in the game is excellent as well. Overall, Final Fight is a cheap, fun game, and it's definitely worth picking up. Final Fight is game number 47 for the collection, and Clue, Super Battle Tank, and Final Fight cost me $80 locally. And at $80, that brings our total up to $13,131 for the Super Nintendo Complete in Box library. Let's get these games on the shelf. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to subscribe, and I'll be bringing you more videos like this. Also, make sure to leave a thumbs up for Thunder Spirits. Until next time, I'm Gamer Wayne, and thanks for watching.